David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another pen review. Today I have for you two pens from a company by the name of Ensso. I have a rollerball, which is currently available via a Kickstarter campaign, and also a limited edition fountain pen, which is available for pre-order on the Ensso site. So you're going to get a bit of a twofer today. We'll talk about price later, but both of these pens are very reasonably priced. Ensso is a brand established back in 2014 and is based out of Los Angeles, California. The company was founded by a designer by the name of Carlo Aiello. The company name Ensso is spelled using all lowercase letters and an accent over the E. They currently offer a number of fountain pens as well as rollerballs on their site. I reviewed a number of them previously. They've also had around 16 different Kickstarter campaigns. As I mentioned, the rollerball I have for you today is featured in their latest campaign and is called the Giro. And the fountain pen is a limited edition version of their Italia model in all copper. So in order to get a closer look at these two pens, please join me over here at camera 2. And here is the Giro. That's G-I-R-O. It comes in this little box here. And here is the rollerball pen. This is the one that's currently available on a Kickstarter campaign. It is called the Giro, which is the Italian word for turn, which is a nod to how you operate this pen. There is a little back portion here, and when you turn it, then that's what extends the refill there. So when you open it up, then it retracts. Just to take a look at the parts and features of this pen, we do have the back here, we'll call it like a piston knob. It's maybe a twisting knock. It is flat. The entire surface of the pen, it might be hard to see here, but similar to pens from Tactile Turn, there is a groove going down the entire barrel, so it does kind of help add to the grip factor here. I do care for this clip. I think it kind of fits in well with the overall look of this pen. It's not too stiff. It functions just fine. I will say that this end here tapers down significantly. For me, that's a little bit of an issue because I have a tendency to hold my pens a little bit close to the end of the barrel, close to the end of the section. And on this particular pen, if you do that, it gets incredibly narrow. So it forces me to hold it a little further back. Though that texture is really nice when it rubs up against the inside of your palm. It does feel nice. If you want to change out the refill, all you do is untwist the end here counterclockwise, and you can see here that it comes with a Schmidt Easy Flow 9000. And then you can just twist it back, and there you go. Now, in the overall design of this pen, I think it looks better when it's closed, and that's when you're actually using the pen. But the vast majority of the time, you're not using the pen, and so you're going to have it open. And I don't necessarily care for the open look as much, so I almost wish it was reversed. I almost wish it was reversed to where it was closed whenever you were not using it, and then you open when you were using it. Just a suggestion, but overall for the looks of the pen, I think that it's a distinct look, but I kind of wish that that was flipped a little bit. Okay, now let's take a look at the Italia. It comes in this box here, and here is the Italia. Now this is a model that I've reviewed previously, but this is a brand new limited edition model that is in all copper. You can see it's very, very bright copper. And one thing that I think is rather interesting is copper is one of those materials that really is going to change over time. And it does so rather quickly. You can see that the outside is pretty much as is. There's really no tarnishing on there. But I have had this inked for a matter of maybe 3 to 4 days, and you can see already that the section is starting to turn. I have a feeling that that's not necessarily because of using the pen and the grease on your fingers, because then the same thing would happen here on the barrel, which it hasn't. I have a feeling that when you are capping the pen and it's inked, then there's basically a higher humidity due to the ink that is inside the cap, and then that's causing this to discolor a little bit sooner. So if you really wanted to, you could polish this up and you could keep it bright, but I have a tendency to let my pens go in regard to letting them tarnish and tarnish naturally and kind of add a little bit more character to them. But in regard to the parts and features of this Italia model, you can see here that the end of the cap comes to a rounded point. It is a little bit on the sharp side. Then we have this clip. It's kind of a sloping clip that it is a little bit on the stiff side, but I do find that since the end is tapered up here, that it really helps in the ease of use. Here on the end of the cap, engraved is kind of a dual Greek key design, which is nice. I will say as well that this is a little bit on the sharp side as well. All of the engraving is a little bit sharp. There's just some sharp edges on this pen. The edge of the cap, when there's a small step down going to the barrel. Now, this was something that was present on the other Italian models that I reviewed, is you could see a tiny gap there, and that is just basically a step up to the section. And, it's just not my favorite feature of this pen. I kind of wish that it was more flush, and so it didn't have that little gap look in there. The barrel of the pen is tapered down at a fairly even angle. At the end here, there is just another groove. This is not a knob, it's just a groove. And again, it's just a little bit on the sharp side if you rub your hand against it. And then it comes to a pointed end. Again, the end is just a little bit sharp. So it just has some sharp edges to it that I just wish were maybe buffed down just a little bit. In regard to the cap, it removes with 1.5 rotations, and underneath we have a number 6 Bach nib. I believe that this pen only comes in fine, and these Bach fine nibs are very nice, that they have a decent ink flow. And then here is a look at the plastic feed. The section angles up at an even angle. It starts with that Greek key design again. I do find that this Greek key design is a little bit sharp, so if you hold your grip at the very end, it just doesn't feel as comfortable because it's a little bit sharp there, so I have a tendency to want to hold it a little bit further back. And I mentioned before, but I do kind of like how that has already patinaed a little bit. And then there is a stair step up. Funny enough, I actually don't find the threads to be that sharp. And then there is a stair step up to the rest of the barrel. This pen does post. It does post rather deeply. It goes all the way down to here. And it is metal on metal, so I'd have to test it over time. I'm not a huge fan of posting metal on metal pens just because I have a feeling that over time they could scratch things up. But it does post securely, and if you like to post your pen, it posts deeply enough, even though this is a heavy pen, that it doesn't throw off the balance, because since the cap is so low on here, the majority of the weight is resting on your hand as opposed to back weighting the pen. So this is a pen that you could definitely use posted, even though it's an overall heavier pen. But even if you want to use it unposted, then it works as well. Okay, here's a look at both of them together. First of all, in regard to price, I mentioned previously that they are both reasonably priced in my opinion. The Hero, or the Giro, is priced at $49, so that's a very reasonable price for a rollerball. And then the Italia is $95. And for a solid copper pen, that's a pretty decent price in those regards as well. And I'll put a link in the notes below to the Kickstarter campaign where you can find the Giro, as well as the Ensso website where you can find the Italia. In regard to size comparisons for the Italia, this is what it looks like with the original Italia that I had reviewed previously. And then in regard to a couple of other ensso pens, this one is the Piuma, and this is in brass. I really let this one go in patina. I probably should shine that one up a little bit. Then here is another one, which is the Piuma Pocket pen, which this is when it is capped, and then this is when it is posted, and that's the size comparison of that. In regard to a couple of other pens, here it is with one more ensso pen. This is the XS Minimalist. And then here it is with a Lamy All-Star. And finally, here it is with a Keras Custom Ink. Now, this ink is copper as well. So you could really see over time, this is the color of this pen when it started. And I've had this one for a few years. And you can see how the outside has patinaed. And then you can also see how the section is patinaed to a different color. Again, because if you keep it inked, then I think that the section is some higher humidity around it and is going to patina a little bit differently. But you can see what eventually, if you just leave this pen alone, what it will look like. But if you want to, you could be diligent about that and polish this. I could polish this one up as well, but you could polish it and keep it that same color. In regard to some uncapped comparisons, this is what it looks like with the Puma. And then here it is with that Keras Custom Ink. And then here it is with the Lamy All-Star. And now in regard to a writing sample, to begin with, we have the Giro. So we have the ensso. And this is the Giro. And this one is the one that's available via Kickstarter. And is $49. And that Easy Flow, that Schmidt Easy Flow nib or replacement is nice. And so I do care for the writing sample of that particular pen. And then in regard to the Copper Italia, again, we have the ensso. And this is the Italia in copper. And this one is only available in a fine stainless steel nib. And the ink that I'm using here today is Diamine Ancient Copper. This is one of my favorite inks. And I figured with a copper pen that I needed to use a copper ink. This is what the ink looks like. It's a nice reddish brown. And then in regard to one of my other favorite coppers lately has been the Private Reserve Copper Burst. And then this is what it looks like with the Leonardo Noce Moscata. And then this is what the 80 milliliter ancient copper bottles look like. This is a standard bottle for Diamine. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. While fine nibs generally aren't my thing, this one is fairly smooth. It has a decent amount of feedback to it, but not scratchy feedback. I'd say that the ink flow on it is kind of medium. It does a good job of maintaining its fine line. And then in regard to some reverse writing, it's a little hit and miss, but in regard to some fast writing, the feed keeps up just fine. Oh, and something I failed to mention is the Italia is available for $95. So there you have the Giro as well as the Italia. As I mentioned before, that I'll put a link in the notes below where you could see the Giro Kickstarter, which only has about a week left to it, as well as the Italia, which does have limited inventory, and they are in the pre-sale period for that. So I think that at the time I took a look at it, they had maybe around 50 pens left. So if that's something you're interested in, I would act sooner rather than later before those disappear. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.